Welcome to the Fintech Founder Journey, the podcast that explores fintech and the founders that power it. We look at how to build better fintech products, better fintech businesses, and how to work on yourself to be more successful in all that you do. I'm your host, Mike Scott, and I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Nona Digital, an expert firm that consults on, designs, and develops software for fintech companies around the world. In today's show, I'm joined by Nick Glynn from Quickapay, who's a seasoned product and tech lead turned fintech founder, and we'll be talking about pivots and building fintech products. This podcast is sponsored by ourselves, Nona Digital. We are an expert firm that consults on, designs, and develops fintech software, and we do it with a level of care and excellence that is rare and difficult to match. Working with us, you get access to a deeply skilled and experienced fintech design and development team with a particularly deep experience in blockchain application development. You get the benefit of a team that is big enough for no key person dependencies to exist, but small enough so that you're always close to the principles. And you get the benefit of our reusable component library, which basically means we are able to launch your fintech products sooner than anyone else could at a comparable standard. To get in touch with one of our principals to see how we can help you to accelerate your fintech project, head over to Nona Digital to book a consultation directly. And now onto the show. Today, my guest is Nick Glynn, who is a fintech founder with a strong product engineering background. Having worked in senior positions across companies like Freelancer.com, Campaign Monitor and Spaceship, he's gained invaluable experience of what it really means to build and ship product. Nick has also contributed meaningfully to the open source community and is an accomplished speaker and technical trainer. Today's Nick focus is as co-founder of Quickapay, where he self-describes his portfolio as strategy, digital, tech, and product. Quickapay is a B2B platform that gives one's customers more way to pay. Welcome, Nick. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good morning.
Yeah, good to have you on. So for the listeners, there is a bit of delay because Nick is stuck in, where is it, Nick? Rural Port Macquarie until lockdown allows him to travel. So just bear with us if there's a delay.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm making the most of it. We were enjoying having some freedoms, but we're all being caught up in the final lockdown. So looking forward to get back to Sydney and join the rest of the unwashed masses.
Yeah, we do what we can to make the most of it. So, all right, let's jump straight into it, Nick. So what does Quickapay look like today? Give me some metrics or milestones that you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, Quickapay today is very different to how we started. We're now doing just over $500,000 in payment volume every month. We're seeing pretty calculated growth month on month, which is fantastic. We're looking to onboard probably about 10 to 20 new merchants every couple of weeks. And we've got a team of 11 now, all Australian based, and we're hitting it hard, which is nice. We've had a bit of an interesting journey with regards to pivoting from what was originally a tradie business to business kind of payments platform. Since COVID, we've kind of moved more into that payment space, and we're seeing some huge successes in new markets, such as training organizations and especially the legal and accounting space.
So talk to me more about that. A lot of businesses start with a hypothesis they want to prove or a problem they want to solve. And you went very quickly over that, and you said you started off with a tradie platform and you pivoted pretty quickly. Talk to me about what you actually started off being, and more importantly, what was that process like that went you to go, hold on, the thing we wanted to build doesn't actually look like the thing that the market wants, but they want this thing, so we're going to build this thing. Talk to me about like that process and how you experienced that.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. It's one of those things that I think we came in with such a strong hypothesis. My co-founder came in from formerly working at Prosper. Prosper had a number of kind of bits of research into this space of kind of like, what does it look like for a tradie to tradie payments platform? So we kind of rallied behind this, and we looked at the fact that some of the key indicators for us were this is a problem, and we looked at it through that lens of kind of late payments. Late payments cost Australian businesses $19 billion year on year, which is insane. It's an insane amount of money. So looking at the fact that buy now, pay later was quite popular, we kind of came in with this idea of like, well, tradies are massive. They commonly have invoices as their kind of like their common language. So how do you put payments straight onto the invoices in a really, really simple way? And that was kind of what our go-to-market was how do we get tradies paid quicker? With a little bit of invoice chasing as well. we took that to market. We found some initial success. And I suppose that's one of the big things for my side as a product guy is it's very easy to be kind of optimized around that local minima. And you think you're doing the right thing and you do a small change and things change again. And you're like, fantastic. It means we're on the right path. But if you're actually at that lower kind of point, anything you do is going to take you one more direction or the other. It's not like you're optimizing from a good baseline. You're literally just at the lowest point because you haven't found that product market fit. One of the things that kind of hit us was the fact that tradies aren't struggling. Tradies get paid because if you turn around and say, I can't afford you, tradies have so much work that they can turn around and say, well, I'll work for someone else. So it wasn't an issue that was needed to be solved.
So, you mentioned product market fit, and I've actually just gotten off a call with I guess he's a client, actually. We did a lot of work for him over the years. He's had a business, and I won't give away what the business is or who the person is. But they've been going for probably 6 years. They've probably raised in total close to $100 million. Wow. And they still don't have product market fit. It's actually crazy, and he's a very seasoned entrepreneur. He's a very smart dude. And I was like, how's it going? Because we're talking about a separate project. And he said, no, we're still going. We're still trying to find product market fit. And I was like, just thinking to myself, I'm like, that is an enormous amount of money to have spent and an enormous amount of effort, but there's still a very strong belief that they'll find product market fit. So with all of that said, how do you, as a product guy, how do you think about product market fit? How do you know when you've got it? And maybe more importantly, how do you know when you still don't have it and therefore keep yourself open to finding it?
Yeah, I mean, you big thing off the bat there is you've always got to stay attuned with maybe you don't quite have it. Maybe what you have isn't the market that you're solving for. A really good way of looking at it is that kind of with product market fit is the problem stack. If you think of this as a stack of problems and someone will tell you, they say, my biggest problem is cash flow. And you go, all right, cool. Well, I'll solve cash flow. But if you zoom out a little bit, it's actually a huge cascade of stacked problems that actually just look to the business owner as if it's cash flow. Solve cash flow, give me more payments, that's it. But if you start zooming out and you say kind of like, oh, why are you chasing payments? Oh, it's because of this. Oh, the reason for that is this. What you really want to look for is what is the least and most effective thing that you can bring to bear to solve the actual problem at hand that has a cascading effect through the rest.
Yeah, I love that. And for some reason, we're in the services game, and the services game, you kind of hear the same thing from every company ever, which is like, oh, everything's great. We just need more leads. And, we've gone pretty deep into this whole thing, and like leads are the result of a whole lot of stuff. The lead problem being solved is the result of very clear strategy, very clear positioning, very clear execution on that, excellent reputation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, it makes me think of that in our world from a services perspective, because you don't solve the lead problem by trying to solve the lead problem. The lead problem gets solved when all the cascading things are sorted out and organized, which is exactly what I'm hearing you talk about, but from a product perspective.
Absolutely.
I want to shift gears a little bit. Nick, you've, in our sort of chats a couple of weeks ago in the preparation, you told me that you've literally pretty much just stopped actually writing code yourself. So you're a very seasoned developer. And yeah, that laugh tells a story. So like as a co-founder, that can be incredibly difficult, but incredibly necessary. So talk to me about that whole transition. Talk to me about like how you feel about moving away from coding, why you've actually stopped coding because you're clearly competent. Just talk to me about like that whole process.
Yeah, it's an evolution. I think every co-founder of business is going to go through that. We came into Quickapay we came into Quicker. That was the original inception, and it was all around invoice chasing, and payments was a kind of a value add. And Quickapay kind of grew out of this realization that there was more to solve, and it was more around that payments and finance and all that. My goal as the more technical founder, I thought initially was going to be a lot more defined. It was very much kind of like everything else was proved out. My co-founder would do X, Y, and Z, and we just have a great old time. Unfortunately, obviously, that never quite comes to fruition. And since starting off as the tech guy, my goal has been to realize that there's more to do in the business. So I'm now looking at reports, I'm looking at our metrics, I'm looking at where we're going over the next 3, 6, 12 months. I'm helping with fundraising. Well, in fact, things like the white label license that we secured last year are a massive part of our fundraising. So you suddenly realize that if you're going to build a company that is actually a product-led company, there's a hell of a lot more to it. You've got to align marketing, you've got to align sales, you've got to align every aspect of that, even from like what you think you can initially do as a really simple kind of tweak in the product actually has a huge cascading effect on things like the UX. How does the customer come through the funnel, etc. The biggest thing that has actually really made my life good is the fact that we've realize where the actual problems were, realize where those issues are. And the only way you can do that is by picking your head up. And rather than me just coding away in a corner, which I had been doing a number of times, is by actually driving out and leading the team in a direction, because that's much more important than me trying to be that 10x rock star guy in a corner. That's great, but the rest of the team is going to just literally crash and burn because you're not providing that guidance or those insights that you're expected to do as the leader of the business.
Okay, so Nick, most of the guests we get on the podcast are very smart, very accomplished subject matter experts, but not necessarily technical founders. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. And that's a bit of a trend at the moment that we're seeing. We're seeing plenty of very smart, capable founders spinning up startups, but a lot of them, I would almost venture to say most of them, don't have technical co-founders. And we get asked every other week, hey, Mike, I'm looking for a really strong CTO. Can you make any introductions to me? And I just kind of laugh and go, you know what, like these guys are unicorns. They're very rare. So good luck with the search. How important, so you have both sides of the coin. You're a co-founder, you've come through the ranks as a developer and a product guy. How important do you think it is to have that highly technical, very senior leader on the team?
I think it's invaluable. If you look at any of the big success stories out there, they've all got technical people, and technical doesn't necessarily mean someone's going to sit there cutting code. It's having that aptitude and understanding of how do I reduce this to building blocks? How do I wire up something so that we can get lead gen? How do I figure out what the data is telling me? Give me those insights that pull things all together so I know what to build, I know how to grow the team, etc. So I mean, I love looking at the guys like the people behind Stripe. You look at a lot of these big kind of players in the space, and it's the technical guys or the product guys that really make the business the success that it is. Afterpay itself, to not trying to contrast in that same light, but Afterpay is fantastic because the guys behind that were focused purely around the product. Making the product easy, getting people to use it, building that product effect was absolutely fundamental to their successes. There's a myriad of other players in the space that predate them by quite a few years, but they're viewed very much by the kind of like dead-eyed finance kind of lens. Why do they lose out to some up and coming scrappy kind of new guy? It's because of that product lens. So I think it's really, really important to know where your gaps are in any co-founders. And I think if you start down the path of, hey, I know everything, I just need a tech guy to build it, I think that's folly. That's going to end up not good for a lot of people.
Yeah, totally, Nick. And you know what we see quite often is a senior developer being promoted into incompetence. Or promoted into failure. And what I mean by that is, you said something that triggered that. It's sort of like that technical co-founder probably shouldn't actually be cutting code. And if they are, like yourself, they should try and move off that as quickly as possible, because that's not actually the CTO or the technical co-founder's role. The CTO or the technical co-founder's role is the strategic level decision and leadership for the product. Nick, have you guys raised funding or have you bootstrapped to get to where you are?
So a little bit of the story behind what we did with Quicker is we obviously went through the Antler Generator program. And that one of the big advantages there is the network and that path to capital that they provide. So the initial thing that happens is you go through their investment committee. They provide you with a yes or no. If you get a yes, then they take a position in the company, 10% position, and they give you an initial investment of about, I think, $155,000. From there on, the goal for Quicker was we really wanted to prove out the idea without raising a huge amount of money. hindsight's 2020. Like, yep, I see all these mega raises and I go, damn, we should have just raised 20 mil and just gone hell for leather. But our goal was to prove out the concept mainly. And the way that we did that is we raised a safe note. So we raised $685,000, which was enough to propel us. And we built our own loan book. We were lending off of our balance sheet. And since then, we've realized that it's better to have more in the bank than not enough in the bank. And finding that balance is obviously hard. So we raised last year off the back of our product and our ability to license the product. And we took Thorn, which is a publicly listed entity. They took a position in our company. So we've raised our initial seed round there, which is quite awesome. So it all comes to bear. We raised on about, I think, 6.2 mil valuation, which was quite exciting.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand that. So you started off going to Antler, which is like a VC acceleration fund. You pitched to them. They took a position. They gave you a bit of seed funding. You built out a product. Then you raised again, and you said a safe note. Are you talking about a convertible note? Just for my benefit, actually, and the listeners, can you just explain what a safe note is?
Yeah, safe note is an interesting concept. It came out of the big space in the valley. So it's a simple agreement for future equity. It's the preferred way for founders to raise money in things like Y Combinator and a number of different startups. It takes the position of being better the convertible note. It does probably assume a lot more good faith on the part of the actual founders. But that was what we wanted to do. Typically a safe note, very similar to a con note, would have a conversion element in there. So you might provide it at a 20-25% discount with a view that at the next raise, that's going to convert into actual equity.
Okay, so you go, just for the listeners' benefit, so to use round numbers, you would say, all right, we're doing a safe note of $1 million. Mm-hmm. We have no idea what the company's valuation is, so we can't tell you what equity that is. But we agree that at the next raise, we will get a valuation and we will give you equity at a discounted rate. In this case, let's say 20%. So at the time that the next valuation happens, those investors will get their value with a 20% increase for coming in earlier and taking the risk. Is that a fair description?
That's a good way of putting it. I like that. Yeah. There's full documents online. Like I said, Y Combinator have gone into good detail on it. But yeah, it's definitely looking like it's gaining in popularity. A couple of years ago, had you tried to raise on a safe note, you'd have been told to get out of their office. They wouldn't know what that is. So I think that speaks to the Aussie tech scene definitely stepping up its game and being a lot more akin to what they're doing in the US.
Yeah, brilliant. And then you said you've raised around 6 million odd now. So just for my own benefit, is that for product and marketing, or is that to actually write loans to your customers now? Is that money for product, or is that money for, let's call it your balance sheet?
Yeah, I wish we'd have raised 6 mil. So we've raised at a 6.5 mil valuation. We only actually took $1 million in new capital. Okay. So it's a shame. I mean, yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that to be our official story if we banked another 6 mil, but yes. So we took in that 1 mil and we've used that to grow out the product team. We've brought some BDMs on, some account managers, and it obviously is helping with regards to focusing our path towards what is our next goal. As an early stage founder, one of the things that you're doing is you're constantly looking at what are your next goals? What are your next yardsticks that you need to hit? And how do you get there? How do you get there? How do you make sure that you're not going to run out of money? Because you may have the loftiest of ideas and the most amazing product, but if you can't bring it to bear because you're going to run out of money, then there's no point doing that. And you're doing your investors and your team a disservice if you do that.
Yeah, completely. Nick, something I'm thinking about as we're speaking is you speak about your partner and you speak about or partners, but you aren't a single founder, you're a co-founder. And it's difficult building a startup, especially when you're pivoting and you're saying, hey, we're going to solve for this problem. And then you realize, oh, shit, actually, that's not a problem we need to solve for. We're going to shift and solve this problem. And we're going to do this thing. And no, we're going to do that thing. And there's a whole lot of decisions that you got to make here, right? And these are difficult decisions under duress, under pressure, through things like a pandemic. Talk to me, if you can, about the process or the experience that you have had and continue to have working with a co-founder. Like, how do you make these decisions? How do you talk about things like this? And do you have any sort of insights or advice to share around people that are building something at light speed, don't have enough information to actually make decisions, but you've got to make decisions? How do you navigate all of that?
It's a hard one. And it does absolutely cause conflict. And managing that's a part of being a mature co-founder. We raise the money together. We look at where we're going with the company together. And we've got to be, obviously, sometimes we may have heated discussions, but you've got to be respectful and you've got to realize that it all comes from a good place. One of our company ethos and kind of motives is we disagree but commit. And to expand on that is we may not have all of the data. As you said, but at an early point, you may be totally the wrong place and you're optimizing in a local problem. But what we want to do is go, well, hang on, I don't necessarily agree that this is the right path, but let's commit to it. But let's time box it. Let's figure out what new data we need to see or achieve to actually prove out that that was wrong or that was right. So I'm an incredibly driven guy. I get that from my tech background. So what I would do is someone comes in with a off the wall idea, and I'm like, that's all right, interesting. It doesn't seem like it's quite the right thing, but why don't we try it? Why don't we try it for X months to see a result of Y, and let's give it a go. We'll commit to it. I may not agree entirely with it, but let's absolutely get it done, and then we can learn from it. And that's the thing. If you're not learning or you don't know what you're measuring, you don't have a clue what you're doing as a business founder.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, two nuggets there. One is sort of, disagree but commit. And I think something that I subscribe to is a very similar thing. And maybe it's actually exactly the same thing in different words, but conflict is healthy. It's totally fine. I think conflict is actually necessary in good decision making. And it's totally fine. Like, you don't need to build consensus. In fact, often building consensus results in a shit decision because it's kind of like the lowest common denominator, especially when you have a big leadership team. I have 7 people on my leadership team. So consensus is probably not a great thing, but alignment is critical. So Absolutely. I'll quite often ask the question, listen, I've heard you. Are you prepared to get behind this decision and come on board? Or do you disagree so much that you actually won't get on board? And it often prompts a better and a different conversation because you're not actually saying, do you agree? Do you agree? Do you agree? Do you agree? You're saying, can you get behind this decision? Because that's actually more important than agreeing with it. And it's that difference between alignment and agreement. And the other thing that I've heard, which I really love, is it's not actually about saying, yes, I like this, or no, I don't like this. It's about going, how can we test this in the quickest and fastest way so that we can objectively get data to tell us whether this is the right decision or wrong decision? I really love that. And it's, again, this is why I think it's so critical to have a product or a tech person at a strategic level, because that's the way you think by default, where a business, quote unquote, based person might not think like that, right? So super interesting share there. So, Nick, the next question is a bit of a selfish one because this is data that I like to gather for my business because we are a services business and we build product for other people. However, I want you to be as honest as you need to be. So the question is, building software teams is very difficult. I think, if everyone could wave a magic wand and just build their own team internally that could do everything and as quickly as they wanted, I think everyone would do that. But it's incredibly difficult not only to find the talent in the current market, but also to manage and scale and optimize that talent. It's very difficult. And that's why businesses like ours exist. But there is no clear right way to build product when we're thinking about internal teams versus external teams. So how do you think about getting the most for your product and optimizing your velocity when it comes to building purely internal teams that are employed full-time by your business versus working with outsourced or external experts or partners to optimize and accelerate your product development?
That's a good question. And it's a hard question as well. I like that one, Mike. For us, the big thing is that my honest belief here is that I'd love to have a swarm of people come in, do exactly what's necessary, and then swarm back out again. That would be ideal. But the one thing that's really important is having that steel thread. I've said it before on a number of chats I've had is you've got to have memory for your company and for your product. And that's typically carried not just in what you write down and the code that you've cut, but in the actual people itself. So there's got to be a culture, and you can own that. You could be the one tech founder who I carry the entire memory of the company in my own head. But I think having some representation internally is really, really important, mainly because if you do want to bring more people in and you do want to scale the team up, it just makes it so much easier because it's not all on you as the co-founder. My view is that I'm going to get busier and busier and busier and much more focused on that product and the strategy for where the business is going and fundraising and all that other stuff. So I'm going to actually have less and less time as things progress, to actually bring more people in, to scale people. So my view is that I'm very much doing the things that don't scale right now. So I have been cutting code, I have been doing the hiring myself, I have been finding people, because it's so important to set the kind of the legend for the team effectively. You've got to set those bedrock layers of how did we get to this point? Because otherwise you're going to bring in new people in, they're going to swarm in, and then they're going to have to disassemble and pull everything apart, dig deep through the bones, to understand how these decisions were made and how the systems impact each other. So I don't think it's that easy to have it as a purely kind of like non-technical thing. I think you've got to have some representation internally, and then that makes teams like yourselves, Mike, it's so much easier to bring you guys in if you actually have a clue what happened beforehand, rather than just appearing at kind of a crash site and going, what happened here? I have to do so much forensics to actually make anything useful.
Yeah, totally. The clients that we work very, very well with are not the ones that are coming to us and just going, oh my God, help us, we're in trouble. They're the clients that are coming to us and going, we are exceptionally clear about who we are, what we're building, where we're going. Most of our clients have got a considerable internal team, some of them literally hundreds of people, some of them not so much, but they're clear. And when they're clear is when we are then able to work with them very clearly, because you'll be surprised at how many quote unquote very successful startups we've worked with that don't have a cooking clue what they actually want to build. They're very smart people, they've raised funding, but they're effectively coming to us and going, all right, guys, so we've got this, but what do you think we should build? And we're like, hold on, guys, that's not us. We're the guys that will absolutely give you expert advice on your product and build it and design it and consult. But you need to be very clear on what you call memory, the product memory. So your story, your vision is of this. And in fact, one of my first guests on the podcast, I've quoted this so many times. I just love what he told me. But he said his mentor told him, and he's a very successful founder. He said, you've only got two jobs as a founder. The first one is to set the vision and bring people along with you. And the second job is to make sure you're never the smartest person in the room. And I just think there's so much value in that. It's set the vision and then build the best possible team of people, whether it's internal or external. So then next question on the sort of, let's call it the tech strategy side, is from a non-technical perspective. So I'm not asking for a deep dive tech here. I'm talking from a strategic perspective. What stack are you guys building on and why? And I'm not talking from a technical perspective. I'm talking from a strategy perspective.
Oh, you might need to expand on that, because I can dive right down into like where our cloud is and all the CI/CD. How do you mean strategically?
Okay, let me take it sort of upper level, because that's a good question, actually, to put that back on me. So a good few years ago, we were building everything for anyone. We had Ruby competence, we had Python competence, we had JavaScript competence, we had Vue framework, like just kind of everything. The only thing we didn't really do was Microsoft. And actually, no, I think at one stage we were doing a .NET project. But at some point, a good few years ago, we were like, guys, we can't be everything to everyone, because that's just going to make us average at a whole lot of stuff. It's not going to make us the best at anything. So we sat down and we did a lot of searching and discussion. And I'm not technical, but I led that discussion. And we ended up choosing React Native, Node, and AWS, simply put. And the reason we did that was not because we sat there and agreed that it's necessarily the best tech for every single build ever. But we took a sort of view that we said, okay, where are the biggest developer communities? Where is the strongest strategic value for a client to say, okay, we use this stack and we're excellent at this stack. And the reason it's good for you is not just from a technical perspective, but for these strategic reasons. And these strategic reasons at the time were fastest growing developer communities. When we eventually hand the product back to you or the feature back to you, you're going to have the best chance of finding developers in this language. It's not some exotic, ridiculously sort of, nascent technology. So, and I remember quite clearly my head of development, he was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm agreeing to this. There's better technologies, but you're totally right. Like, this is the best choice for pretty much every client we're going to speak to for those strategic reasons. Does that make sense? Like why I'm asking that question? Yeah, cool. So under that lens, what's your stack and why did you choose
This is where I get to be in a bit of a sod, because I gave a talk on this for Antler recently, and there's obviously that really cool. There's that silly kind of answer. Then it's like the best tech stack is the one that helps you deliver the fastest. And there's a lot to be said for that. What I tended to look at is what do I have confidence in myself? And you mentioned at the beginning, right? My background, I've done training and consultancy. I've done low level building stuff in like microassembler. I've been building PIC architectures all the way up to kind of like Python for like large scale data processing. And I've built everything pretty much in between. The one thing that really irked me as I started as a developer was everyone had their own opinion. And as you probably heard the phrase, everyone has an opinion, but also everyone has it doesn't mean it's a good thing. So one language that really stood out to me, and I've probably spent the last 6 years developing it, is Golang or Go. Um, the reason for it is it does all of the things that I tend to try and do myself. It does it as an actual language. It is opinionated. It has a certain way of looking. Like if you don't format it correctly, it doesn't build. If you put a variable in and you don't use it, it doesn't build. So it does. It has all the strong opinions, so I don't have to, and neither do the team. Um, and saying that out loud, it sounds a little bit ridiculous. You're going to get like your Java guys and your .NET guys are going to go, "Oh no, my code language has an opinion." It doesn't. Everyone has opinion. Everyone sets up their IDEs. Everyone does all that kind of minutia, and you don't need to care. My goal as a founder is to deliver the product as quick as possible. I want people to be aligned. I want them to be building and solving the business problems, not the apocryphal weird stuff in the actual language itself. And Go is modern with definitely a look back to the 80s. It learns a lot of lessons from that. But it's built for web scale. It's built for ease of use. It's a really easy deployment. That's just one part of our stack, but we try and use as much Go as possible. And the recruitment's an interesting one, Mike. The reason I say that is Go is not as big as .NET or the Java communities or all of the other languages that have become kind of a lot more entrenched and out there. But one thing it does have going for it is incredibly motivated developers who want to learn it, want to build it. With regards to hiring, I found hiring Go guys a lot easier. People are interested in it. It was something like the not top 2 or 3 languages behind JavaScript, and JavaScript's incredibly easy to pick up. Doing it well is a different story, but yeah, Go is one of those languages that is just loved by developers. So that's what we lent into. We lent heavily into.
Yeah.
Let's pick something that people are going to work with. The rest of it, I pick boring stuff. Like we've got a strongly typed language for the back end. We use Postgres for the database because Postgres is awesome. We use AWS because everyone knows AWS. And then on the front end, we did treat it a little bit differently. We used Vue rather than React. I still don't know if that was the right decision. I'm going to stick to my guns because like I have to at this point. But we could have hired a lot of React developers. The market is both crazy, but also there's a lot of people out there. Again, I picked Vue because I wanted to pick up those people who are motivated or willing to come across and do something that's viewed as just a little bit better. It is a little bit more opinionated. It is a little bit Go-esque. But yeah, so we chose some interesting choices, but we've definitely been stronger for it. Like it could have been the case that I'd have picked Python or something like that. And we'd have just stuck with that and there wouldn't be anything standout. But when it comes to describing our tech stack, people go, oh, and then you chose this, why? And then you did this, why? Oh, this is incredible. And like we've had people who have joined the team purely because they want to write Go, purely because they want to write Vue. And that's awesome. That's a really easy sell on my part.
Yeah, lots of really interesting shares there. You know, we happen to have built a pretty massive project actually in Vue and quite a few years ago when it was very new, let's call it. And it was awesome. Also JavaScript framework, obviously, so not too far away from what we now specialize in, but lots of insights there. And I think, you know, this is one of the reasons why having that technical co-founder is so critical, because you can look at these things from those angles and, as you say, have strong opinions. Whereas when you're a very smart, capable founder with no technical depth, these decisions can be quite daunting and you can make the wrong decision without even knowing about it, because developers are generally so incredibly opinionated. I mean, you know, it's one of the most sort of, I think, heavily opinionated professions that there are. If you ask every developer they'll tell you they're better than the next guy, and they'll tell you the language they're using is better than the next guy's language they're using. And that's great because there's passion, but it makes it very difficult to decipher the stuff when you're not a very technical person, right? So lots of really valuable stuff there. Look, besides your own project, what is another fintech project that you're following or fascinated by? It doesn't have to be in Australia. It can be anywhere in the world. What projects are you finding really interesting globally at the moment?
I'm definitely following the what's happening in the blockchain and the Bitcoin space. I made mistakes early on. I don't know if you guys remember, but back a little while ago when they used to do you could mine on your own machines. I actually helped my housemate at the time at university build a dual SLI rig and all this sort of real fancy stuff. And we took two very different approaches there. He thought, hey, this Bitcoin thing's kind of cool. I want to help building a machine that can mine it. And he mined it. I thought I'd give it a go because I'd worked at Intel at the time. So I had some pretty cool hardware that was probably better than what was else in the market. So I built a machine. I did a bit of mining. I took the path of, I'm going to delete this because I don't know what the future is. He took the path of, I'm going to keep mining. He now part owns a Cessna. He's got a flying license. He also has an apartment in Hong Kong. He also has an apartment in New York, and he's also got a house in London. We took two very different paths. I don't know who made the right decision there, but I'm not jealous at all. So, like I said, I don't have a position in the crypto, but I'm definitely following it. I think there's some great applications for crypto. I think there's also some terrible ones. So I'm watching the NFT market. Our guys were just literally talking about it this morning. So I had a team stand up, and NFT seemed to be the kind of like the kind of de rigueur thing everyone's talking about at the moment. And I talked to an actual investor, and he was like, "Oh, we've just backed this blockchain NFT thing." I was like, "That's awesome." He goes, "Yeah, you can just lock it all up, and then you can license it out." I was like, "That's not how an NFT works." He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, with an NFT, like you're putting it on a blockchain, you're literally putting it out there. Either it's a signature, or it's the actual data itself." He's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" I was like, "All right, let's break it down another level." And I was like, "I can actually look at your blockchain. I can find the digital asset that you've put on the blockchain, and I can copy it out. And I have a copy of that image or that video or that MP3. And he goes, "How?" I went, "That's literally how the blockchain works. You're literally saying, this is mine, I've signed it, and then you build on that. It's a trust network. It's a distributed network, but it's a trust chain. It's a distributed database." And I kind of felt bad because I then watched the color drain out of this guy's face where he realized that any of these NFTs were available to anyone. And it was that fundamental misunderstanding. So I think blockchain, I think all of this technology is definitely still in the nascent stages, even though I think it's quite far along in some respects. The consumer understanding of it and the wider public's understanding of how it all comes together, I think, still very early. So there's definitely some huge opportunities in it, and I'm watching it. I haven't picked any particular. Like you could say, oh yeah, CoinJar, one of the big exchanges, they're phenomenal. But I don't think there's much value in exchanges. I think it's in the application and the usage, which is why like things like Ethereum are so interesting. How do you use a financial product to encode applications? That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in what you said there. I think the NFT space is, it's massively flavor of the season. But you're right, there's a massive misunderstanding. All it is it's digitally provably that it's yours. You can digitally prove that it's unique and it's yours. But anybody can, by definition, view and display or listen or copy it. And in fact, there were some funny things. I was hearing some sort of, I don't know, quote unquote artists talking about creating NFTs of NFTs, kind of as a bit of a meme, but so like a one of one of the one of one, a screenshot of a Beeple NFT, wow. To your point, because the mechanism exists. It's only the provability of it. Cool, Nick. I'm going to move to some rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap up. So number one, in a couple of words, what scares you in business?
Regulatory capture. That's what I would say. It's a weird one, but I think definitely having a clear product goal, having a partners and everything like that, and then all of a sudden the ground shifting underneath you is terrifying. And I say that as someone in the buy now pay later space. That's a scary one. That we could be caught up in problems that we can't even see right now.
What content are you consuming currently?
Not much. I'll be honest. I'm sticking with my comedy podcasts. I'm trying to read a bit more, and I mean, yeah, just generally being mindful of how much content is actually being produced. I've got to just try not to drink from the fire hydrant. So Hacker News and Reddit form a big part of that, but I can dip in and duck out, and that's probably the best attitude right now for me.
What's the last book you read cover to cover?
The Hard Thing About Hard Things by the guys behind A16Z.
Ben
absolutely.
Horowitz.
Fantastic book. Really, really good. Some great insights. And the guy's just an absolute cad. I love it.
I just love how he starts every chapter with some gangster rap phrase. I think
definitely,
it's
if you flick through, you'd be like, what is this?
What is... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is something that you're doing in the next 7 days to improve yourself or your craft?
One thing I try and do every week, funnily enough, is I try and do a little bit of a quiet hour. What I do is no screens, no nothing. I just try and do a little bit of introspection to find out, am I doing the right thing? Look at what I've done so far this week. Am I going to hit a target by the end of the week? Normally I go to the gym regularly, but COVID's kind of kicked that in the ass. So I really want to try and figure out what I can do to make sure I take care of my physical self as much as my mental.
Nick, we've spoken about a bunch of things. It's been great. If there was one thing that you could choose that the listeners take home with them, what would that one thing be?
I'll say something that means a lot to me. And it's just that I live by a couple of like silly mantras. And I think they're good things to take home because obviously I've spoken a lot during this, but some things that I fall back on are is that the worst decisions make the best stories. And I say that as someone who's traveled the world and done a lot of stupid things, but also that's pretty much things I could talk about at length at a bar. And the other one is that even in business, you ultimately, even personal business, whatever, you're responsible for your own happiness. If you're doing something and you're hurting yourself, stop. If you want to achieve something and you're not, aim for it. Look at it. That's my big goal.
Yeah, I love that, Nick. Do you like to be contacted or followed? If you do, how can the listeners best contact or follow you?
I'm terrible at social media. The only thing that I'm enjoying right now is LinkedIn. So if you want to watch me troll other founders, investors, and everyone like that, please have a look for me on Nick Glynn. I'm just Nick Glynn, one word. Come and connect. Happy to talk. And anytime people can reach me, I'm always happy to chat.
Awesome, Nick. Thanks so much for making the time today. It was super awesome. I think the main takeaway for me, you've just got me really thinking again around, there's just a theme in the way you speak. It's kind of like from a product perspective, it's like, don't put your opinion on it, figure out the way to build it and then get data. And now you just said yourself, you're responsible for your own happiness as a founder. If it's not working, stop, find a new way to do it. You've just got me thinking about the sort of, especially at a founder level, you're in control of things, but that also means that you're responsible for yourself of things. So what are you doing and how are you doing to actually, basically don't bitch, do something to make it better if you want to make it better. So yeah, Nick, thanks so much for making the time. It's been really awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And I hope my internet from rural Port Macquarie hasn't held too badly, but thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And to the listeners, thanks for listening. If you would like to discuss your fintech project with a team of experts in design and development, you're welcome to book a call with me or one of the principals on our website, which is www.nona.digital. And I'll be back next week with another episode to explore the fintech founder journey.